Hello, everyone. Welcome to Black Children's Book Week 2022. My name is Tangular Irby, and I am the author of the book, Pearl and Her G's Ben Quilt. And I am so happy that you came to join me today for this read aloud. Now, I hope you brought your favorite quilt with you to bundle up so that we can enjoy the story. But before I start reading, I want to share with you some of our family secrets, some things that you may not know about the book. For example, the name Pearl comes from my grandmother's name. My grandmother was Pearlie Kennedy Petway, and she was a G's Ben quilter. And on the cover of this book, Pearl is actually holding one of my grandmother's quilts. This is a quilt that our family actually owns. And throughout the book, you will see some of our family treasures. For example, the quilt that I am bundled warm with today is my baby quilt that was made for me when I was a baby. So let me tell you a little bit about G's Bend. G's Bend is a very small rural area in Alabama. And if you were to look for G's Bend on a map, you wouldn't find it. Now it is called Boykin. And when my mother was growing up, families back then had lots of children. So it was not uncommon for families to have 10, 12, 13 children. So the mothers would get together and they would quilt to make quilts so that their babies could be warm. And these quilts are now known as American treasures all over the world. You may have even seen a design that was inspired by G's Ben quilts. If you've seen the official Michelle Obama portrait that was made for the White House, her dress, the patterns, those geometrical shapes in the dress were inspired by G's Ben quilts. So without further ado, let's get into the story of Pearl and her G's Ben quilt. On a lazy Sunday afternoon, Pearl sat playing in the living room with her friends, Sally and Ella, as the aroma of homemade biscuits, smothered chicken, rice, collard greens from the garden, and Grandma's famous tea cakes filled the air. Wow, that quilt is amazing, Sally said. My mom has quilts like this at our house. Grandma told me I had come from a long line of G's Ben quilters whose quilts have been displayed in galleries and museums all over. Pearl proudly boasted. When I get older, I'm going to make quilts too, and one of my quilts will hang over there one day. Pearl pointed to the empty space where she intended to display her work. That's pretty neat, but what are G's Ben quilts? I've never heard of that before, Sally asked, wide-eyed. Pearl sat up straight with confidence. Back when my grandma was younger, the house she lived in did not have any heat, so she and her siblings used quilts to keep warm during winter. The families who lived in G's Bend, Alabama were very large. Some had 10 or more children, so they needed lots of quilts. They would tear up old clothing and use for fabric. The women would move from house to house, quilting during the evening. During the day, many of them worked at the Freedom Quilting Bee. They would use sewing machines to piece together the tops, but they quilted them together by hand. Sally and Ella listened in amazement, surprised that their play date had turned into a fantastic lesson about Pearl's family history. Grandma always says quilts are like your handwriting, Pearl explained. She says every quilt should be different from everyone else's. I asked Grandma how she comes up with so many different designs. She told me she talks to God when she quilts, and he gives her an idea every time. I told her that I'm not sure that I will be able to quilt the way she does, but she told me you can only do your best. You cannot do my best. Helping Grandma is exciting, Pearl tossed her hands in the air with a sweet smile. I get to pick the pieces of fabric that she will use next or thread the tiny needle. Sometimes I thread 3 or 4 so that they will be ready when she needs them. Sally and Ella lay on their bellies as Pearl recounted the rest of her story, her voice rising and falling like she was singing a song. Grandma says quilting isn't always easy. Sometimes the fabric is very thick and she has to use a thimble to keep from pricking herself. One time she stuck herself. I could tell she was vexed, but no matter what, Grandma keeps quilting. It sounds like your grandma knows what she's doing, Ella said. I bet you can't make one. Yes, I can, Pearl blurted in response to Ella's challenge. Since you think you know everything, listen to this. The most important part of the quilt is the top. To make her special designs, Grandma sews many different scraps together. Sometimes she uses old clothes that don't fit anymore or Grandpa's old t-shirts. Pearl spoke quickly, telling everything she learned, but paused to take a breath before starting again. When the top is finished, the rest of the quilt is ready to be stitched together. Did you know that? Pearl crossed her arms in satisfaction when Sally and Ella shook their heads, then went on. The middle layer is called the batting. When Grandma was little, sharecroppers grew the cotton and they would pick, then flatten it for the quilts. Next comes the backing. Quilters used to use 25-pound flour sacks for the backing, but now we can go to the store to buy everything that we need. Do you have any questions? Pearl asked her friends. No, they answered in unison. Good, Pearl said. Now, when all the pieces are together, the backing is folded to the front and the quilt is binded together. Some people quilt straight lines, crooked lines, patterns, or designs. Sometimes Grandma follows the designs on the quilt top. Then there are times when she sews puzzle patterns. She says that it depends on what God says when they talk. I like looking at the back of the quilt to see her designs. Wow, Pearl, you are right, Ella exclaimed. You know a lot about quilting. Grandma says that me and my cousins need to learn so that the world will know about our quilts too. The girls hadn't noticed that Grandma sneaked in to eavesdrop and hear Pearl teaching her friends so well. She held a few quilts in her arms as she addressed the girls with a sweet smile. It sounds like Pearl has been watching and listening, Grandma beamed with pride. She knows all about our family quilts and where they came from. We didn't have a lot of money back then, but we always had our quilts. Our elders gave us quilts as gifts, especially when we moved up north. We got them when we married. We even got them when we came back down south for visits. Ella and Sally, I have a gift for you. Here are your very own G's Ben quilts. Take good care of them. Grandma handed each girl a quilt and was delighted to hear them squeal with excitement. On the back of your quilts, I have signed my name and written the name of the quilt. No one else has a quilt like yours. One day, you can pass it down to your own children and tell them the story of G's Ben quilts. And there you have it, my friends, the story of Pearl and her G's Ben quilt. I hope you enjoyed the story, but I just want to share a few more things with you. I want to share with you that there were actually postage stamps that were made with different quilt designs on them. These were all quilts that were made by people who live in G's Bend, Alabama. And as an author, I just want to share with you, one of the hardest things for me to do is to read my own book, because every time I read it, I want to add a new word, a different word, because I get so excited. but I hope that you have enjoyed hearing about Pearl and her G-spin quilt. I have something I want you to do. My family story is a story about quilts, and that's one of the things that makes my family special. Your family story might not be a story about quilts, but I want you to start talking to your elders about what makes your family special. And I want you to write those things down. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy Black Children's Book Week.